does it mean for a camel to go through the eye of a needle? All right, so what we see here, we see this in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, as they're giving these parallel accounts. We see in Matthew 19:24, it says, "Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." Mark 10:25 says, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." Luke 18:25 says, "For it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." So the first thing we have to address and answer is this saying that a rich person can't be saved? And I would think, as Jason's shaking his head back there, that we would all hopefully agree, no, that's not what it's saying, right? That it's not saying if one is wealthy, that means they can never enter the kingdom of God. So obviously, that's not what Jesus is saying. Obviously, I think that's plain and clear. But there are some people who take this literal understanding of things where they apply that and say, see, it's impossible for a rich person to be saved, even though Jesus in this message makes it clear as he goes on and says, it's impossible, or when he goes on and says that all things are possible with God, right? So the most likely explanation of this, and this is why I said this one shouldn't be very long to kind of just look at, but is that Jesus was using hyperbole. It's a figure of speech. It's an exaggeration. We use it all the time. Sometimes we don't even realize we do that. But we use hyperbole a lot. We use figures of speeches. We exaggerate for emphasis. And so Jesus used this technique at other times as well, when we see him referring to the plank in one's eye. It's not that a person literally has a plank in their eye. He's using hyperbole and saying, look, you got this sin in your life that's like a plank compared to this speck in this other guy's eye, but you don't see it. He's using a figure of speech. We see this when he says the swallowing of a camel. He's not, again, this is just hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. So this is, again, a characteristic that we do see more than once from Jesus in his message. But his message is clear. It is impossible for anyone to be saved of his own merits. That's what he's getting at. So no one can be saved of their own merits, their own righteousness. There is not one person in here that can stand up and say they've earned righteousness before God. They merit salvation. No one can stand up here and say that. So no one can be saved on their own. A rich man, in this instance, is looking to his riches more than he's looking to God. Tends to happen even when the rich young ruler comes up to him and says, "What must I do to be saved?" And he says, "Oh, keep the commandments." And the guy's like, "Oh, I've kept all my commandments. I've kept all the commandments." And Jesus says, "Well, sell all you have and give it to the poor and follow me." And the guy went away sorrowful because his money was his God, right? So it's not impossible that a rich person can be saved, but like the Bible teaches, you can't have two masters. You can't serve God and mammon at the same time, right? You can't serve Christ and Belial. What fellowship does light have with darkness? It doesn't. And so, with man, it is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God, and men are saved through God's gifts of grace, through his gift of grace, his mercy, his faith, as we see in Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. So that was just a quick one. I thought we'd get started, and maybe we can move through more than one. Any thoughts, questions, comments on that? All right.